Selfish charity. Why do we help others? If someone you knew needed one of your kidneys, would you give it to them? If so, why? Why would you hand over part of your body to someone else? Is it because you don't want them to suffer? Are you afraid of feeling guilty if they died? Or is the act of charitable giving more complicated than this? What is it that compels us to act for the benefit of others and the detriment of ourselves? Why are human beings altruistic? Selfishness. Egoic altruism is the idea that everything we do is done to benefit ourselves in some way, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. And I suppose that makes sense. Why should one individual care about the well-being of another unless it is for their own sake? If life is just one long struggle to survive, then why should I dive into a pool to stop an old lady from drowning? She's only going to use resources that I might need. And what if I want to pull off a sweet cannonball in front of the hot lifeguard? Little Miss Drowny-Face over there will get in my way and prevent us from hooking up. It makes no sense for me to help her. And yet here I am, soaking wet and cradling an angry, soggy pensioner in my arms like a total badass hero. I mean, sure, it turns out she was doing aqua tai chi and not drowning at all, but still, I leapt in to save her. I risked my own life. Why? Am I a truly selfless person? Charles Darwin worried that the apparent human propensity for altruism may one day prove a fatal flaw within his theory of evolution. In his 1871 book, The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex, Darwin investigated the origin of sympathy and considered whether the trauma of witnessing another person's peril was a motivating factor in our own decisions to help others. According to Darwin, when we see someone in distress, we might want to help them simply because their screaming is annoying. All that blood might get on our clothes, and the distress will only continue when our wife comes home to discover that our 5-year-old son now knows what a chainsaw does. A more recent publication seems to back this up by concluding that altruism can become hardwired in the brain, dependent on your personal experiences. In 2016, a team of University of California researchers scanned the brains of people who were made to watch a video of someone being pricked with a pin before being asked to imitate photographs of faces displaying different emotions. The researchers noted that significant activity took place within areas of the brain associated with experiencing pain and emotions and imitating others. The conclusion is that those who've experienced certain traumatic situations and sensations empathize the most, expressing a desire to see others treated as fairly as themselves, since it makes them feel good about their own prospects. So, if you've ever been accused of not having empathy for migrants fleeing war, abuse victims, or people with life-crippling illnesses, all you need to do is experience all those things and you'll be a regular Mother Teresa. But then again, why would you want to do any of that? Is it because it makes you feel good? It makes you feel woke? Or is this desire to help others part of your instinct to survive? Survival. Why do we idolize heroes? When I explained how I saved that old lady earlier, why did you all imagine me as a good person for doing so? Don't lie. You pictured me in a red cape and sparkly thong, didn't you? I get that a lot. But what is the evolutionary benefit of strong, powerfully voiced people like me saving weak, whiny mortals like you? Wouldn't that reduce our species' overall chances of survival? Apparently not. In the book we mentioned earlier, Charles Darwin proposed that sympathy for others was actually favored by natural selection, while acknowledging that it was not a uniquely human trait. The great biologist was quoted as saying, "In however complex a manner this feeling may have originated, as it is one of high importance to all those animals which aid and defend one another, it will have been increased through natural selection, for those communities, which included the greatest number of the most sympathetic members, would flourish best and rear the greatest number of offspring." Plenty of scientific studies have been dedicated to the evolutionary cause of altruism, with many contradicting each other in myriad ways. For example, Jessica Somerville's 2011 investigation found that 15-month-old babies displayed altruism when their peers were given unequal amounts of food. And this goes against the idea that a charitable nature is merely learned. So is altruism really an evolutionary trait which helps certain species survive? This was the conclusion of a group of Princeton mathematicians who discovered a link between charitable giving and random catastrophic events. In 2016, a team led by Dr. George Constable published a paper in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Scientists journal, which found that groups containing a high number of altruists became statistically more likely to survive disasters than those populated by lots of selfish individuals. Their conclusion was deduced from a number of observations, including that of the yeast fungus. Yeast has a pretty sweet life as far as I can tell, since its two main options are to produce a sugar-dissolving enzyme to create food for the colony, or use that same energy to reproduce. However, too much fungus love would mean some yeasty boys could gain an advantage at the expense of the group by not doing their fair share of work. If a group is overly selfish, they risk overpopulation and food shortages, and therefore the only yeast colonies which survive long-term are those predisposed towards altruism. It's like in Season 2 of Game of Thrones when King's Landing is about to come under siege from Stannis Baratheon. Yes, I have started rewatching it while longing for Season 8. Anyway, when Tyrion asks Bronn why he's had all the city's thieves killed, he explains how those who pilfer food will put the population at risk when their supply lines are cut off. Individually, those thieves may stand a better chance by taking more food than they need, and if they only stole small amounts of food, then nobody would notice. However, the survival chances of each individual in the city would rise if the thieves weren't there at all. And, according to Dr. Constable, the odds increase even further if charitable beings are added to the equation. But this only explains why altruism is advantageous and why it was passed down. We still don't know where this behavior comes from within the individual. Kin versus group. In the context of evolution, altruism is thought to have been born of one of two forms of natural selection. Group selection contends that natural selection acts upon the entire group of organisms, with the goal of all creatures being the survival of traits which are advantageous to their species. While self-preservation plays a part in this, the longevity of the group is paramount. Kin selection argues that the evolution is geared toward ensuring the reproductive success of an individual organism and its relatives rather than the species at large, with acts of apparent selflessness being explained by either a direct or perceived relation between the giver and receiver. A formula for this theory comes from William Hamilton's 1964 works submitted to the Journal of Theoretical Biology, where he states that altruistic genes could evolve when the benefits of certain actions towards one's relatives were greater than the cost to the individual. For example, imagine your sister's child is dangling precariously over the edge of a volcano. My sister's kid's quite a jerk, so really this is quite fun for me. Kin selection suggests that you may be compelled to risk your life to help him if certain criteria were met. Perhaps your sister can no longer birth any more children, or maybe you're too damn ugly to have kids of your own. In this situation, your family's genetic future depends on this one dangling child. So saving him is far from an act of altruism. It is survival for both you and your kin. Not all altruistic acts can be directly linked to the survival of a certain genetic group. Yet, mathematical models do seem to support kin selection over group selection, as do the countless examples of altruism in the animal kingdom. A number of insect species are known to contain worker insects which are entirely sterile, and this wouldn't make sense if the sole purpose of life was to continue the survival of you and your direct offspring. Still, in many species, altruism can be seen to be limited depending on how related the two parties are. Sun-tailed monkeys, for example, will help relatives on their mother's side the most, but are significantly less helpful to relations more distant than their half-siblings. This rings true with human beings too. Most people would help a close family member out if they had a problem, but you'd be less enthusiastic about sacrificing personal happiness for a distant cousin, even less so for a stranger who lives on your street, and even less likely still to offer help to someone who lives in the next town or city or country over. So what does this mean for human society as a whole? Are we doomed to only ever help those with whom we share blood or race or ideas? Or can altruism itself progress? And if so, would this be to the benefit or detriment of humanity? We're going to explore this in our bonus video, The Evolution of Altruism. which you can watch on our Patreon page at patreon.com/strangemysteries. For a $2 a month pledge, which you can cancel at any time, you'll get to watch this and all of our bonus content, which goes deeper and darker into every topic than YouTube allows. If you don't want to donate, then that's bullshit.
We know you wanted more. Strange Mysteries on YouTube and our Patreon bonus videos weren't enough to quench your search for truth, to give you that sense of awe and wonder again, to go past what you thought was the end, to give you the answers you seek, but which only lead to more questions. That's why we just upped the stakes. Chemicals of reality. Reality, consciousness, brains. What else is there? Ask yourself that question. Perhaps that's all there really is, but perhaps everything else is found within a place where these ideas, these things, overlap. Some thing, some place that is undefinable. To many people, altering certain chemicals in their brains produces what they would simply call hallucinations. In fact, what we're going to discuss specifically used to be called the businessman's trip, as one could enjoy it. Come down and put your pants back on in the time it takes to eat lunch. It wasn't taken seriously, well, unless of course you started digging. And some people, including us, did. Already though, to many people, this chemical is special amongst others. Very special. To them it represents something more meaningful and incredible, as if it's the gateway to the next level of consciousness. The ticket to a higher reality barely explored by most humans. It is the entry point to a new reality, visited by only a select few, whose minds have become enlightened through the use of this exotic substance. For this reason, it's commonly referred to as the spirit molecule. But is its reputation as a mystical mind-opener deserved? Or is it, and everything it represents, just a load of bullshit? We look at, investigate, and dive deeply into nearly all available research regarding this question, from nearly every angle feasible. And in the course of doing so, stumble upon unexplainable patterns, correlations, and neurological evidence for a reality existing beyond this one. Watch this hour-long Strange Mysteries premium video, Chemicals of Reality, as well as many more to come by becoming an elite premium member of our Patreon at patreon.com/strangemysteries.